Welcome back to the Daily Crypto Roundup. As always, this is your go-to place to get fully caught up on what's been happening across the crypto market, without the noise, without the hype, and without the constant doom and gloom takes that floods social media. If you're new here, this show is all about what's actually happened in the market, what's moving prices right now, and the real stories you need to know about, all in one place. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the strong move higher we've seen across the crypto market over the last 24 hours, how Bitcoin has reclaimed key levels after a brief dip, and why the way this rally has played out is important. We'll also be covering what's been happening with Ethereum, Solana, XRP, and the wider market, before getting into some actual news stories you can get your teeth into. That includes fresh stablecoin activity, a major funding round for a key crypto infrastructure firm, what's going on in the NFT market, and a couple of altcoin-specific stories that have been making waves. Before we get into all of that, if you enjoy this show and you want to support it, make sure you're following the podcast so you don't miss future episodes. We put these out regularly, and following the show is the easiest way to make sure they land straight in your feed. And if you ever want to support the channel further, you'll find links in the episode description to tools we use ourselves to secure crypto and access exchanges. It genuinely helps support the show and keeps this whole thing running. Right, let's get into it. As always, we'll start with a quick look at the top 10 cryptocurrencies by market cap and where prices are sitting right now. Prices in this episode are proudly sponsored by Ledger. Use Ledger hardware wallets to keep your Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other digital assets secure with industry-leading cold storage protection you control, because the safest wallet is the one you own. Bitcoin is trading around $69,350. Ethereum is about $2,055. BNB is near $643. Solana sits around $86.90. XRP is about $1.42. Dogecoin trades at roughly 10 cents. Cardano is about 27 cents. Bitcoin Cash is around $524. Tron sits near 27 cents. And Hyperliquid is trading around $31.90. These are live prices and reflect the market right now. Check the screen or your favorite chart for the latest moves. Now, let's get into the actual news and stories driving today's episode. The big headline, and the one most people are paying attention to, is the strength of the rebound we've seen across the crypto market. Bitcoin has posted one of its strongest single-day moves in months, rising roughly 10 to 11% from recent lows. After briefly dipping below key levels earlier in the week, Bitcoin didn't just bounce, it held. That distinction matters. In previous sell-offs, we've often seen sharp bounces that quickly faded as sellers rushed back in. This time around, the dip was shallow, buyers stepped in quickly, and the market continued higher. That doesn't mean we're suddenly in a straight line back to all-time highs, but it does change the short-term conversation. We're no longer talking about whether the market is falling apart. We're talking about whether this move can continue. Ethereum's price action supports that narrative. Ethereum reclaiming and holding the $2,000 level isn't just psychological, it's structural. Ethereum moving alongside Bitcoin suggests this rally is broad-based rather than driven by isolated speculation. Analysts have pointed out that Ethereum acting as confirmation rather than a laggard is generally a positive sign for market health. Solana's rebound has also drawn attention, particularly given how volatile it's been over recent months. Some analysts have cautioned that Solana's move could be vulnerable if volume dries up, but so far the rebound has been supported by activity rather than thin liquidity. Network usage remains strong, and there's no immediate sign of ecosystem stress showing up alongside the price action. One of the more tangible bullish signals we've seen comes from the stablecoin market. Over the last day, Tether has minted another $1 billion worth of USDT. This is a significant data point because stablecoin issuance often reflects demand for liquidity entering the crypto ecosystem. While it's not a perfect indicator, rising stablecoin supply during a rally suggests fresh capital positioning rather than just traders closing short positions. In other words, money appears to be moving into the system, not out of it. Another important story comes from the infrastructure side of the industry. Anchorage Digital, one of the largest crypto custody and infrastructure providers, has secured $100 million in fresh funding. This is notable because large funding rounds like this have been relatively rare recently, particularly outside of hype-driven narratives. Anchorage provides custody, staking, and infrastructure services to institutions, and this funding round suggests continued confidence in the long-term role of crypto infrastructure, regardless of short-term price volatility. It's a reminder that while markets move up and down, builders and institutions are still investing heavily behind the scenes. Not all parts of the crypto market are seeing the same level of strength, though, and the NFT space is a clear example of that. NFT trading volumes have continued to decline, with recent figures showing daily sales down roughly 20% to around $58 million. That tells an important story. While major cryptocurrencies are rallying and infrastructure is attracting capital, speculative corners of the market remain under pressure. That's not necessarily a bad thing. In many ways, it suggests this rally is more selective and more mature than some of the moves we've seen in past cycles, where everything went up at once regardless of quality. There's also been some coin-specific news worth touching on. One of the more talked-about altcoin stories today involves PI Network, which has seen price movement following a Kraken-related development. Exchange-related news continues to be a major driver for smaller projects, and this is a reminder that listings, integrations, and exchange activity still matter, particularly outside the top tier of the market. Meanwhile, analysts have begun to shift the tone of their commentary. Over the last few days, much of the conversation was focused on downside risk, liquidation cascades, and worst-case scenarios. Now, the focus has moved toward whether key levels can hold, and whether the market can build on the strength it's shown. That doesn't mean caution has disappeared, but it does mean the narrative has changed. One thing that stands out is how the market has reacted to what would normally be considered negative or uncertain news. Instead of selling off aggressively, prices have either held steady or continued higher. That's often a sign that selling pressure has been absorbed, at least in the short term. To be clear, this doesn't mean risk has vanished. Volatility remains elevated, and sudden moves are still possible. But the behavior of the market over the last 24 hours suggests we're dealing with a very different environment compared to earlier in the week. As we wrap up today's roundup, the key takeaway is this: the crypto market has shifted from fear-driven trading to constructive strength. Bitcoin has reclaimed important levels. Major cryptocurrencies are moving together. Liquidity is increasing rather than drying up, and real businesses within the industry are continuing to attract investment. That doesn't guarantee smooth sailing from here, but it does give the market a much firmer footing than it had just a few days ago. As always, keep an eye on how prices behave around key levels. Watch whether volume continues to support the move, and don't get carried away by short-term excitement or short-term fear. That's it for today's Daily Crypto Roundup. If you found this useful, make sure you're following the show so you don't miss the next episode. Thanks for listening, and as always, we'll see you at the top.